Seraphin, I am sorry for the corny Elvis joke being in the building.
That was a good segue, actually. I thought that was great.
I've been trying, man. I didn't want to pull it with the senator, right? He's a very serious man. So I was like,
you know what? He's a serious man, but he's from Oklahoma. And did you hear what he just dropped on you? An scapegoat? That's not a thing. It's scapegoat. But in Oklahoma, they got special phrases and they say things in different ways that I went to school in Oklahoma. So I have a lot of love. I'm a Sooner. I graduated from there. I'm going to drop this on you. And I'll send it over to the senator as well. When I was there, I had a boss while I was working at a computer company who kept saying things were cross-eyed bears. He would just go, I'd say I had a problem, and he'd go, "Oh man, that's a cross-eyed bear," and I'd be like, "Oh, okay, yeah, it's a cross-eyed bear." And then he would go and do it again, and he would say, "That's a cross-eyed bear," and I was like, "I don't know what the heck a cross-eyed bear is." Just like I don't know what an scapegoat is, but he kept saying it over and over again. Finally, I repeated it back to him one time. He said something, and I go, "Dude, that's just a cross-eyed bear." And he's like, "What's a cross-eyed bear?" And then I knew something was wrong, and I realized it was an Oklahoma thing. And he just goes, "Can you use it in a sentence?" So we did it again. He goes, No, son, a cross-eyed bear." It's a common expression in the South to say that there's a cross you bear. I just heard cross-eyed bear, just like I just heard a scapegoat. And you know what? Oklahoma's a special place. Like, don't let anyone tell you otherwise.
Think about this, Kyle. If we have so many serious things to talk about, but like, why not? All right, I'm from farm country in middle of nowhere too, and Iowa was where I was raised. You could be talking about an escaped goat.
That's right. It could be a thing.
Could, like the fence breaks, a goat gets out. Goats
You've got to go get it. You've got to track
animals. That's right.
In the same way,
animals, they can climb, they can jump.
Yeah. Cross-eyed bear, he's got troubles. A cross-eyed bear is a problem. It's walking through the woods. It's hitting trees. It doesn't have depth perception. Like, there's all kinds of issues that go along with that.
Are you ready for this one?
I'm ready.
Let's talk about the goat of internet censorship, Elvis Chan.
He's kind of a goat, yeah.
And he's an escaped goat who was able to, I guess, not get fired. Obviously, you've been popping off. You and Garrett have been popping off about this. I don't know if you know Elvis Chan or if you've ever worked with him. And the senator did get a fact incorrect. He said that he was just like a low-level FBI. No, he was a special agent in charge, to my understanding.
He was an ASAC, actually.
And he got promoted. And so I want to dive into this with you, but I wanted to just like start off the top and say, when your time at the Bureau, like, were you aware of any like open internet censorship that was going on?
No. So this came out of San Francisco. This was a program that was referred to as Bronze Griffin, which people may have that and they go like, "Oh yeah, I kind of heard about this." If you were paying attention to the Twitter files drops, which I was riveted by when they happened, we found out that there was this thing that you hear Taibbi talk about, you hear Schellenberger talk about it. They did it in testimony. They referred to it as I think a censorship industrial complex. And I would actually broaden it because it's not just censorship, it's an information industrial complex. So we've got a military industrial complex. Those are senior level military leaders. They get hired on to industries after the fact. They get hired on not because they know the most about fighter jets, right? They just know the guy who signed the next check for the next fighter jet. And that turns out to be really lucrative. We saw guys like James Baker, who were the former attorneys working in the Office of General Counsel for the FBI. They go get hired on by Twitter because the FBI is an intelligence agency. And it deals in information. It doesn't deal in fighter jets. It deals in info. That's what intelligence agencies do. So what we saw was this departure and this sort of interplay with people who were working for the Bureau in the intelligence sphere and then going to the place where intelligence lives in the private sector. And that is Google or Meta or any of the other sort of major tech companies. And Twitter was one of them at the time, now X. All of these places are places where information resides at a level and a bulk collection that the government would be jealous of. And so they want to make sure they have those inroads. One of the things Taibbi talked about was a quote unquote belly button, which is the interface. It's the navel that connects a mother to a baby, but it also connects two places with this back and forth exchange, right? Waste out and nutrients in. That's the umbilical cord. So having that belly button connection was saying the FBI was the front person because they're a legitimate law enforcement agency too. They have like a cover for action to go out there and interface with all these businesses. And they do so under various programs. There's a thing called InfraGard. There are two different offices that fall underneath the director that involve interface with the private sector. And those are basically two things. They allow the FBI to maintain legitimacy and kind of leverage. We saw kind of a carrot and stick situation. Like, we'd really like you to do this. And then the alternative is, if you don't, there's going to be this penalty regulation coming in from Congress. Mark Warner was famous for saying these things. They were like kind of holding it over the head of big tech. And regulation equals expense. So they don't want that. And then the second piece of it was they were like, also, we'd like to get our people into jobs after the fact. So let's just go ahead and send them out there. Let's put these people into positions so they're going to be empathetic. Can I drop something that's not currently public with you right now? I found it.
Please.
The stuff you were showing earlier, this is the Catherine Herridge, and this is Schellenberger's documents. They were showing those text messages. If you guys want to throw them on the screen, you can.
Please.
A lot of it was redacted, right? Mm-hmm. And one of the things that they showed a redaction of, if you'll scroll over, it says OGC AGC. That is the Office of General Counsel, Assistant General Counsel.
Yep, right there at the top.
Now, in this case, and there's multiple instances of it in the various different slides that they had. And the fun thing about that is that person was a very specific person working under national security. That person's name is Matt Perry. I asked somebody in the Office of General Counsel about it and said, can you give me a historical on the timeline there and what this guy was doing? And he went from Washington, D.C., where he spent most of his career. And now he lives, you're going to be shocked to hear, in San Francisco, where Elvis Chan cut his teeth as the ASAC, the Assistant Special Agent in Charge, working Bronze Griffin, working with the tech agencies. And he works for Microsoft now, which is the exact same protocol that we saw James Baker do. This pipeline of FBI attorneys directly over to working for big tech companies, it's undefeated. It's Mike Benz's blob. It is the thing that continues to go on. It's intelligence that exists both in private and in public sector, and they work together for the same ends, which are antithetical to liberty.
So the guy who was responsible for rigging the 2020 election, or at the very least was excited to do so by censoring conservatives, trying to destroy our site, trying to destroy our show, trying to destroy the young creators on our team who've worked with me for a decade or more, those guys got rewarded.
Yeah. That's how it always works. They get to retire with a pension. They get to go over there and take a new job that pays them a bunch more money for services rendered. And thanks you for being part of the team. And also, by the way, their names are never made public. They're redacted by the FBI. Right. Why? That guy's not an FBI employee. He was an attorney. He didn't work like super sensitive cartel operations. I've got buddies that have gone and put cartel members in jail and get credible threats by people who actually cut off heads that they say, hey, these people are going to come after you. You've disrupted this prison gang and they've put bodies in the ground. And what do? Do we move them and redact their name from all the public documents? No, we just give them a little bit more security for a little while. Sometimes the FBI pays for cameras or something. It's just not that much, because there's a risk that you assume when you decide to go and raise your hand and swear allegiance to the Constitution and say you're going to do an honest job. And by the way, that guy's not a law enforcement officer. And he never was. He never swore the same kind of oath. He didn't carry a badge and a gun. So this is the problem with putting non-FBI agents into places. And Elvis Chan is another example of someone who is an FBI agent, but he's an intel guy. And so what he does is his allegiance is to information and intelligence, not to criminal investigations or legal criminal process.
So look at this clown, that grin on his face and that inexplicable hairline. And he's
what kind of belt do you think he holds in BJJ, if you were going to guess?
Well, my pay grade. Elvis Chan on securing the 2020 election. What's to stop them from doing it again is my question to you, Kyle, because we saw obviously the Blinken letter to Michael Hayden. We saw Michael Hayden getting all of the CIA directors on board. We've seen the emails now. Mm-hmm. We've seen how the op worked. We've seen the dirt, the muscle come through and the threatenings and the deplatformings. We've seen the op at play. What's to stop them from doing this in 2028? If everybody just gets rewarded, Kyle, if everyone who's a part of this gets a pat on the back and a golden star to pin on their chest and a plum job at Microsoft, paid half in stock, then what's to stop them from pulling this operation again?
The short answer is nothing, shy of an FBI that goes out there and gets some transparency and gets some accountability. And those are the things we talked about the last time you and I spoke. They need to be done. The senator said the same thing. There is an advantage of having them working for the Bureau. You can actually compel testimony. You do what's called a Kalkine's warning. This is a very specific procedure for federal employees. You can get dragged into an internal investigation, and they have two options. They can give you a Garrity warning, which means you don't have to incriminate yourself and you don't really have to talk to us, like what you're saying is voluntary, or they can give you a Kalkine's warning, which says we're not going to hold you criminally liable, but we might take your job if you violated the terms of your employment, but we do need you to answer this, or it will be insubordination and you will be removed. And so you do have some tools that you could leverage. Was Elvis Chan the only guy running this op? Was he the highest level? Probably not. But I do know that he was out there talking to CEOs. He was the front man of it. And he wasn't a low-level person. He was a GS-15, which maxes out the government scale. He's a second-line supervisor and answerable only to the special agent in charge, which he's now been promoted to, from what I hear. So at the end of the day, he was a senior person in the FBI, no question about that. Those people are referred to as executives and front office and a bunch of other nonsense. So they have a lot of ability to operate with a wide latitude. So he's not nobody, okay, under any circumstances. And I had people that were on conference calls. Here's the fun thing. They have evidence of this at the FBI. If they were so inclined, guys like Kash Patel, people like Dan Bongino sitting in there right now, who've talked about some of this corruption, who know these stories inside and out because they've been covering them the same way you and I have, they can walk out there and do something about this. There are videos that were shown around the country to various members of the FBI. And you know how government works. If they put it on video, they also recorded it. It goes into the archive. They don't ever lose any of this stuff. Storage is cheap. And they were broadcast with Elvis Chan specifically. I know he was talking to the CEO of Reddit, whose name I don't know off the top of my head, but was talking to the CEO of Reddit. This is in a post-laptop era, but Biden administration. This is when FBI whistleblowers were starting to come forward to weaponization. And I had a whistleblower come to me and say, listen, here's the problem. He stood in front of an entire audience locally and then also across the country, which was videotaped, and it was like available through the secure net. And he said, kind of a wink and a nod, like, we can't enforce your terms of service, but we certainly could call people out. And if you wanted to block people, ban people, censor people because they violated your terms of service after we use the investigative resources of the FBI, the American federal government's going to lean on a private company and tell you who violated your terms of service. You know, you could always get rid of them. And it was a wink and a nod, and everybody kind of chuckled and said, yeah, that's what we can do. And that's what they actually did. That's what the Twitter files proved. That's what people on your team and others have actually experienced. This is not like not a victimless crime. This is something that cost people their livelihood. There was a lot of money. And of course, an election was in play, which they're claiming, it was the only thing. There were a lot of things at play during that time, but an FBI weighing in on any side, weren't they accused of rigging something that happened with Hillary Clinton as well? They were all like, everybody was up in arms about it. I just think they thought it was going to go the other way when they sort of like let her go with it. Dropping that quote unquote bombshell by saying they weren't going to prosecute her was a big deal. It could have gone just as likely the other way, where Americans were like, well, the FBI said that she's good, so she can be president.
Okay, so quickly, this gets to my point. Like, they did it with Hillary Clinton, and nobody suffered any consequences. Mm-hmm. Nobody went to prison, right? Some people lost their jobs. Maybe they like it better outside. I don't know. But like, it didn't matter. They all got CNN gigs. They all got MSNBC gigs. No one suffered. And so why not run it again? And they ran the exact same op with just different shades in 2020. Mm-hmm. So what should happen, Kyle? Like, if you were in charge of this, what would you advise? Like, what should happen to ensure that it doesn't happen again? I don't have to do this show in 2028, brother.
Well, we're probably going to do it. Let's be real, because that's just the nature of the status quo is basically undefeated in this country right now. But let's say what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Let's say mutually assured destruction was a pretty good situation. And it worked pretty well in the 80s. We never went to nuclear war with Russia. We never went to, with the USSR. We lost one of the great Cold Warriors, Val Kilmer, a.k.a. Iceman, right? Just lost him overnight. One of my favorite people of all time. Reminds me, mutually assured destruction was, if you attack me, then you get attacked in equal and opposite kind. They went after Donald Trump with 18 USC 241, conspiracy against rights. And that was supposedly because he defrauded the American people of their right to be able to elect the president and select. And this was January 6 nonsense. That's what they went with. Conspiracy against rights. It's very broad. Conspiracy means it didn't even have to happen, by the way. It just means that you planned for it to happen and you had an executable plan. And so the discussion of that plan is enough. Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, the director's advisory team, the folks that are working inside the Bureau right now have the ability to query these comms. They can find the conspiracy. Those are criminal charges under 18 USC. They could actually go after. And it's not the first time that somebody who's worked for the FBI has been indicted for criminal conspiracy or has done something criminal. Generally speaking, the biggest reason to get removed from the FBI is when you embarrass the FBI. And what is more embarrassing than weighing in on not one, but two different presidential elections and having people run an op against the guy who's currently the sitting president? And as you mentioned, 20% approval rating for the other team right now. Democrats lean into the 20 when there's an 80-20 issue. They go and find the fringe minority and they own it. They wear it. They put the skin on like it's their own. Okay, fine. You get to own that. Let's go ahead and prosecute some people that have done some things wrong. And then you can get all the people that were crying about defund the police and saying that the cops are the bad guys. Okay, sure, there are some people that are bad. I heard Kash Patel say, let good cops be good cops. Do you know who was standing behind him when he had that press conference? Stanley Meador.
a very bad cop.
Okay, the guy who actually was the special agent in charge in Richmond when they went out and published that radical traditionalist Catholics were potentially close to white supremacists and likely to be recruited by white supremacists to do God knows what. The same guy that was the final straw on whether or not that got approved was standing behind him during the good cops discussion, because that guy also got promoted. And you know who hasn't been promoted because he's still suspended forever is my friend Garrett O'Boyle. He's gone 30 plus months without a paycheck for telling people about real corruption like this and talking about, hey, here's the cases where FBI agents were investigating parents at school board meetings. And these are the specific parents, because when I released the first piece of it and I went to weaponization and said, look, they've introduced this threat tag and now the FBI is actually saying they're going to use counterterrorism resources on parents. That's pretty bad. The question is, did they actually do it? And Garrett O'Boyle was part two. He was the second punch in that, where he went to Jim Jordan's committee and said, not only did they release a threat tag saying they were going to do it, here's the actual parents' names whose rights were violated. And here's the people who were actually going to be the victims of that lie that the attorney general was involved in. You mentioned Merrick Garland earlier. He was the source of all this, but all this stuff actually comes to a slightly lower level of corruption. People like Lisa Monaco, people like Lee Loftus, who are the number twos sitting in the DOJ that actually run the DOJ historically. Like, the attorney general is kind of a figurehead. They give you like broad policy, but they're not actually managing specific offices. And so a lot of this stuff got carried out by people who are legitimately what we call deep state. They're administrative state. They're people that have been there for 20 or 30 years. They always get to retire. They never end up going and paying for any of this stuff. Their names are never publicized when the Office of General Counsel says, by the way, we had a finding of wrongdoing from 3 years ago, and these are all the things they did. They did this, and they did this, and all this, and here's the case for it. And we've also sort of concluded that this is true based on the burden of proof that we have. But that person has retired, so we have no options. We referred it to FBI and DOJ has decided not to prosecute their own people because they went and they work in the private sector. The same lady who removed me, she works for General Electric. She has a job in aviation as a chief security person. And she removed a bunch of Christians specifically for saying they didn't want to get the vaccine shots and said, we have a sincerely held belief against this. And she said, well, we're going to pull your security clearance because you are not loyal to our regime. And you have some personal guidelines because we don't agree with the way you think. They did a straight up purge in the FBI. You heard Jim Jordan say this for the last couple of years. That's not fake talk. That's not just like someone being hyperbolic because they're in Congress and running for office. They legitimately purged dissent. So there were two types of people. The people who said, I don't think this is right and I'm going to highlight myself, you get removed. And the people who saw those people get removed and go, man, I still got a paycheck and the stuff I'm doing is not directly doing any criminality. I'm going to keep doing my job and shut my mouth. And so people have learned the exact wrong lesson. And unless we have accountability where some people pay and some people are made whole, which is a really big thing. If some people are not made whole and corrected, I actually got Schellenberger yesterday with my April Fool's tweet. Like I posted that Garrett O'Boyle and Steve Friend were reinstated with full back pay and benefits, and they've been promoted. And I got Miranda Devine. We got Alan Fuhr at the New York Times. So it goes to both sides, both in New York. We had Schellenberger, Project Veritas, various other people going like, yeah, congratulations. And it's like, yeah, that was a joke because it's April Fool's. That should have totally happened. That's why it was plausible. And that tells you exactly where America's at right now. The wrong people got promoted. The right people are still waiting for justice. We can't have that.
I'll tell you, we will clip this. We will tweet it. We will tag Cash, and we'll send it, man.
I've already press tested it for them. You know what I mean?
Amazing. Like there's a feedback loop now that is getting really tight, and it's important, and it really does come from the people who are victims here. And I would never classify myself as a victim, but Kyle, like if there are people who have been victimized by this, and this goblin straight up like tried to take us offline, tried to destroy our show and my company. Sure. And this was the intended result, was to demonetize and then deplatform. And so this is an existential threat to me, my family, the people who work for me, who are my family, who work with me. So yeah, like a dog with a bone, man, we're going in. Kyle, we got to jump, dude. You're the man. Thank you so much for always shedding so much institutional light on everything. And also for bringing up Val Kilmer, who is a legend, and who is the Iceman. And, yeah, it's sad to see it, man. It's sad to see him go. I mean, he only had 10 minutes of screen time in Top Gun, and he's the most memorable. Give me another Top Gun. No, I don't want to see the Batman one.
No, show me the bite.
There you go. Thank you. Yeah,
there it is.
That's right.
The bite, the chomp, the gum chomp.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Taking a bite out of crime. Kyle Seraphin. Everybody go follow Kyle. And obviously, he's a excellent source of information on this. 200,000 people already follow Kyle Seraphin. Get in there. Truly brave man. Thank you, Kyle.
Thanks, Benny.